You're facing a question that feels too sacred for a spreadsheet. Does the Bible bless cremation or does it call for burial? And there's one number quietly pushing grieving families into a rushed choice, and almost nobody explains it. So let's walk through what Scripture actually says and what this choice actually costs a grieving family. Here's the honest truth. The Bible never hands you a single rule that says burial only or cremation only. It does something gentler than that. It shows you a pattern. God's people buried their dead. Abraham even bought land for it, and he paid 400 shekels of silver for a burial field in front of witnesses. Burial was their way of honoring the body and trusting God with everything that came after. Let me tell you about Ruth. Ruth lives in Ohio, and last spring she buried her husband. A few weeks later, she found out she also owned a second grave, which was a plot her mother had bought years earlier and left to her. Ruth's a woman of deep faith, and she wanted to do the right thing. Was cremation a sin? Would burial honor God more? She lay awake with those questions. Then the phone calls started. A man from the cemetery office sounded kind and calm, and he offered to take that extra plot off her hands. He named a price. Ruth almost said yes right there. She was exhausted, and grief makes you want the hard parts to just be over. But that plot wasn't only a sad reminder, it was property. It came with interment rights, written on a certificate of interment, and what that man offered her was far below what it was actually worth. Hold on to that. So what does Scripture actually say? Let's walk through it in plain steps. Step 1 is the simplest one of all. The Bible honors burial, and it never once forbids cremation. Genesis says that for dust you are, and to dust you'll return. Fire and time both return a body to dust, and Scripture doesn't call either one a sin. Step 2 tends to surprise people. Cremation is already in the Bible. When King Saul and his sons died, brave men burned their bodies and then buried the bones with honor. Scripture tells that story respectfully, so the fear that fire somehow cancels a Christian burial doesn't hold up. Step 3 is the heart of the whole question. Your hope doesn't sit in the condition of the body. Paul wrote that the body is sown perishable and raised imperishable. God isn't limited by ashes or by a grave or by the sea, and he's raised the faithful from all three. That truth is what freed Ruth. Her husband's faith was safe, and her own choice couldn't undo it. Step 4 follows from that one. The method is a matter of conscience. Burial is a beautiful, honored choice, and cremation is a permitted one. Your family, your budget, and your peace all get a seat at the table, and you don't have to carry any guilt about it. Step 5 is the part people miss. Good stewardship doesn't stop at the funeral. If you were left a plot you'll never use, that's property God placed in your hands, and letting it go for far too little doesn't honor anybody. Knowing what you're holding is part of doing right by your family. Now here's the number I promised you. Funeral industry data puts the median cost of a funeral with viewing and burial at about $8,300. With cremation, it's about $6,280. That gap of nearly $2,000 is the quiet pressure I mentioned. In a tired, grieving week, that gap can push a family toward the cheaper path fast. And it's one reason more than 6 in 10 American families now choose cremation. And here's where these two threads meet. The plot sitting in Ruth's name was worth more on the open market than that entire $2,000 gap. The money she was agonizing over was already hers, and she almost signed it away to the first caller. You've got rights here too. The FTC Funeral Rule says the funeral home has to give you an itemized price list, so you can pick only what you actually want. Would you make a lifelong decision that way, worn out and rushed? Ruth almost did. So let me hand you back some calm. Your plot is separate from all of that. In Ohio and in most states, a burial plot you were left is a real asset. When Ruth checked, the cemetery's buyback offer sat far below what an outside buyer would pay. And a fair sale on the open market can return real money to your family. It doesn't have to drag on either. A clean listing can go live in one business day, and a first inquiry often lands in 7 to 10 days. Once you accept, the transfer usually takes 3 to 10 business days. And if the cemetery buys it back itself, that runs about 2 to 3 weeks. Protect yourself on paper. Ask for the transfer form in writing. Send your documents by certified mail and ask for payment as a cashier's check. Ruth did exactly that, and she never signed that first low offer. Let me leave you with 3 things. First, the Bible honors burial and permits cremation, so you can choose with a clear conscience. Second, your hope rests in God's promise. Third, a plot you were left is real property, so learn its true value before you ever sign anything. Before I go, here is this week's featured listing. It is a grave at Pinelawn Memorial Park in Arboretum in Farmingdale, New York, in the Garden of Normandy. It is listed at $8,495 and showing is available today. The seller can walk you through the exact location. You will find it on eternalrest.com. Search Pinelawn Memorial Park. If this helped you, here's your next step. Here at Eternal Rest, I put together a free plot seller's playbook. It walks you through pricing, paperwork, and the exact questions to ask before you accept any offer. And you can find it at eternalrest.com. Take it, and you'll never have to sign from a place of pressure again. One more thing, and please hear me kindly. Everything I've shared with you here is general information. Your own cemetery keeps its own rules, and your state writes its own law. So check both of them before you sign anything.